Hello tanks and tankettes, and welcome to a viewer replay courtesy of PuppetPalsClem here, and I'm guessing that's a reference to something. He's in the KaJaPa, the Kanonenjagdpanzer, and this is actually getting a buff the next patch that's coming along, 9.15, so I decided to pick this one out because, well, it's literally the only KaJaPa replay that's ever been sent to me. You don't see these around a lot, and that's because it's not very good. Now this actually came out in the middle of two other premium tanks, the 59 Patent and the M56 Scorpion. At least on EU, I think they were a bit more spaced on other servers, but they all came out roughly around the same time, and they're all actually getting some buffs this time round. Now the 59 Patent's already had one lot of buffs, I think, and it's getting some more. The Scorpion I don't think has had any buffs, so it's not getting huge buffs. I think it's more to do with dispersion. But for this, well, when it came out, I think a lot of people, along with myself, just slated it because it just felt inadequate. It felt like a premium matchmaking tank that they'd accidentally given full matchmaking, because it can see tier 10s. Doesn't have the firepower for seeing tier 10s. It's mobile, and that's its greatest asset, but it can't cope with those tier 10 games. And a big part of it is that although this is supposedly the same gun that the Spähpanzer RU251 has, the 90mm Rheinmetall DM1, it's actually a weird mashup in terms of its stats between that gun and the French 90mm gun. If you actually look at the stock setup for the AC-48, the DPM is basically copied from that, but it has the shell travel speed of the DM1, so it's a very slow AP shell. It's 800 meters a second versus 1,000 meters a second for the French 90mm, but with that French 90mm, it's got quite a low DPM. It's actually got a worse aim time, and it's just inadequate. It just doesn't have the penetration for seeing tier 10s, and yet it can see tier 10s. Now, the buffs it's getting are, and I said this at the time, it needs more penetration. It needed 230 to 240 mil of pen. That's what it's getting. The AP penetration is going up to, I think, 238 mil. And the shell speed, well, it says it's being buffed by something percent. I can't remember the exact percentage, but I calculated it would put it at around about 1,030 meters a second. So the shells are going to get a lot faster. However, it's also still going to retain those high penetration HE shells that the DM1 gets. So you're still going to have that, and you'll actually see Puppet Pals here attempt to use those shells at one point, but mostly he uses the AP. So for matchmaking like this, that 212 mil of penetration is more or less fine. It really was the fact that it didn't get limited matchmaking. And all three of those machines actually felt like that. They felt like limited matchmaking machines in terms of their balance that somehow Wargaming had just forgotten to give limited matchmaking to. And I think that was really the last batch of premiums where we truly had that issue. There have been premiums that have come out since that have maybe felt inadequate in different ways, but they seem to have been balancing them a little bit better in terms of, like, the balancing department's caught up with the fact that, hey look, we're not doing premium matchmaking anymore. So it's, I don't know, but this is just overdue. It's long overdue, and I don't know if it means we'll finally see more of these on the battlefield. I mean, I will take it out myself once patch 9.15 hits, and I'll see if that feels, if it feels better. It's still not going to be particularly excellent in any one regard, apart from mobility, but even then, it's not like there aren't other fast mobile tank destroyers at tier 8. The Jagdpanther 2 is pretty good, and of course the AC-48 itself is also pretty good in a straight line. So although it's going to run rings around things like T-28, it's not like it's the only mobile tank destroyer, and those other mobile tank destroyers at tier 8 have much better firepower. So it's still going to have DPM that is on the low side, and it's still going to have penetration that is on the low side, but it's going to be a lot better than it is now. Honestly, I think they could stand to buff the rate of fire a little bit, just a little bit. If it had an extra 100 150 DPM maybe, I think they could actually make this a comparatively pleasant machine to play. But no, we are getting at least the extra penetration. So anyway, we've come down to this situation where they had a big numbers advantage on PuppetPal's team, but most of his team, the survivors, were tier 6s and tier 7s. And of the remaining 4 enemies, well, 3 of them are tier 8s and 1 of them is a tier 7 heavy. So his tier 6s just got ripped apart by these guys. And it's not looking actually that good. It seemed like they had a nice numbers advantage. But if you can take out this IS-3, who was very obligingly giving him rear armor to shoot at, then that's fine. So that's 1 down. However, yeah, he just got flanked by a T-28. How embarrassing. Now that's killed his driver, whom he hastily repairs. And the T-28, well, he's not going to get another shot off. And he does try to use some HE on the rear armor there, because the HE, as with the RU-251, has, I think it's 102 average penetration. So there are a lot of times when, if you can get the rear armor of somebody, you can actually basically effectively have better shell damage with a better chance of doing module damage to boot. However, that's more useful with the RU-251 because it's fast, it's a light tank, and oh hello KaJaPa, oh that's the ammo rack, that's not good, and also it has a turret, whereas this doesn't so much, so it's of more limited utility in this machine than it is in the RU, that really high penetration HE. But there are still going to be times when you can use it. So he's going to run away from that KaJaPa, which is probably entirely sensible. It's now down to him and Oni and artillery. And, oh, once again, rear armor. This is fantastic. If he can finish this guy off. Well, okay, might have a bit of a wait with the reload. Yeah, like I was saying, it could do with a slightly faster reload. Nothing dramatic, but just a little bit more. Now, the M44 has greatly helped matters by the fact that he's taken out the KaJaPa. However, the Oni has now died as well. So, he's sitting here with a damaged ammo rack, 96 health, versus an IS-6, who is a one-shot, and a T-28, who, well, we actually don't know what damage, what health he has at the moment, actually. We'll have to wait and see until he pops up again. Now, he has got artillery on his side. He can potentially sit and spot for arty. He's got bush set up, as it were. He's got binoculars and a camo net, as well as actually having camouflage on his vehicle. So it's probably better to just sit and try and spot for artillery. So now we play the waiting game, but he's not going to have to wait very long, as we shall see. I should also note his artillery, the Allied artillery, is not... I mean, it's a good news, bad news situation. He doesn't have any fire support from the artillery because the artillery is actually being active and driving more towards the enemy cap, perhaps with a view to getting on the enemy cap. So on the one hand, it's nice to see an artillery that's not just sitting in the back, doing nothing, passively waiting to die, and actively trying to help ensure the victory at this late stage of the game. On the other hand, I'm sure that Puppet Pals would really appreciate the fire support right now. It's not like the M44 has stopped somewhere safe to turn around and actually aim back towards the cap. He's still driving towards the enemy cap. And bear in mind, the T-28 is still probably around in that area somewhere. So there's every possibility that the M44 is actually just running off to his death, because the T-28 will undoubtedly, well, not necessarily undoubtedly, but likely spot the M44 before the M44 can spot him. So it's a huge risk, actually. I personally, I'd have, if I was in that artillery, in that scenario, I would have holed up on, say, D0, somewhere like that, and turned and tried to help Puppet Pals. But as it turns out, the IS-6 doesn't try and side scrape, doesn't try and do anything there. I mean, it was a tricky situation. He could have maybe tried to wait for the T-28, except of course the M44 is now on the cap, so perhaps the T-28 is turned around to try and deal with that. But yeah, he just pushed around and gave sidearm, and it was in some ways sort of lucky that Puppet Pals penned that, because it's heat premium ammo on this machine. If it had gone in the track covers or in the tracks themselves, of course, it wouldn't have penned. And that's one of the issues, again, with this machine, is that it can see tier 10s, and the premium ammo is heat. And there's a lot of machines with spaced armour at tier 10, especially Soviet machines, that are very difficult to penetrate with heat shells. And so you're just left with the 212 average penetration AP. So, yeah. Anyway, I fast forwarded it because that's basically it. The artillery does in fact cap for an invader medal. The T-28 isn't able to reset, although he was actually a one-shot. But although this was the less glamorous way to win, I think, you know, it was the safe way to win. So they actually walked away with the victory. And of their team and the enemy team, actually, the T-28 had by far the most respectable damage. 3,500 damage done. But Puppet Pals didn't do so badly himself. 2,800 damage, which is it's all right for this thing. It's not bad. But you're going to need long matches in order to rack up high amounts of damage. And it's not like it even gets that much ammo. I mean, this is one way, another way in which it compares badly to the AC-48 with the 90mm gun. It gets, I think, 30 rounds less ammo. And it's a smaller machine, but it's not that small of a machine. So, yeah, anyway. So, this is getting buffed. And this was basically the point of this replay. I mean, it was quite a decent game otherwise. But, yeah, wargaming do occasionally, it sometimes takes them a while, but they do occasionally get round to fixing the inadequate things. And the next patch is actually bringing a fair few tweaks and changes to a fair few number of vehicles. So, it'll be interesting to see how some of them play after that. So hopefully you have enjoyed this replay, and if you have, you can leave any comments below, you can hit the like button, you can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.